life reaches its darkest depth, people wonder if there is still hope for the future. Where can we find the promise of joy that will overcome our deepest sorrow? Luke 24 records the encounter of the Emmaus travelers with the resurrected Jesus. After the account of Jesus' ministry up to his death, Luke gives some details on the post-resurrection. Jesus died on Friday before the Sabbath, and the women could not embalm the body because of the Sabbath, so they waited until Sunday morning. Early Sunday morning, two angels dressed in white told them that Jesus had risen from death. When they had returned from the tomb, they reported to the 11 and the other followers. After the report of the women, Peter went and witnessed the emptiness of the tomb. The disciples were mourning the death of Jesus, and it was hard to convince them he had risen. And that brings us to our key verse for today, which reads, "And their eyes were opened, and they knew him, and he vanished out of their sight." Luke chapter 24, verse 31. After the women's report and Peter's confirmation of an empty grave, two of the disciples decided to go to the village of Emmaus. Jesus joined them early in their journey, probably, and they should have rejoiced because the one whom they were discussing had joined them and is alive. However, they are kept from recognizing him. Their eyes are holden, meaning restrained, from recognizing him. This unbelief might have been due to their sorrow, because Mark 16 verse 10 mentions that the disciples were mourning and weeping, or it may be that God intentionally prevented them from recognizing him. Jesus has heard enough of the disciples' discussion, and he challenges them. He rebukes them for not understanding that everything happened to him was necessary for fulfilling Scripture. Jesus' reference to his glory may refer to his resurrection, the ascension, or both. The Greek word for glory in both passages is doxa, which refers to light and radiance. The transfiguration scene on the mountain echoes the scene of Moses on the mountain with God, where the appearance of God's glory was like fire, after which his face shone. There is a sense of brightness or radiance and divine glory, both in Exodus and Luke chapter 9. When they reach Emmaus, Jesus acts as though he will continue his journey. And hospitality is part of Jewish culture, as we can remember, for instance, Abraham accommodating the stranger back in Genesis 18. The writer of Hebrews urges his readers to welcome strangers in Hebrews 13, verse 2. This emphasis on hospitality is significant for our time. The practice of this virtue is rare. Individualism, mistrust, and experiences of many hosts with their guests, fear of strangers, lack of free time, and other reasons discourage many Christians from extending hospitality. The powerful way Jesus explained the Scripture to them had certainly also played a role in their invitation. They might have been willing to hear more, and the sudden parting of their companion would have deprived them. So while on the Emmaus road, the disciples failed to recognize Jesus, and for this reason, once they got indoors and were about to eat, Jesus took the responsibility of sharing the bread. Their eyes, which had prevented them from recognizing Jesus, were enlightened now by the act of the breaking of bread. However, they did not enjoy his presence for long because he disappeared from their sight. Now that the disciples have recognized him, they then analyze their journey as having the companionship of a stranger who talked to them. Not only did their hearts burn within them, but also Jesus allowed them to increase their understanding of the Scripture. So here's our lesson. The despairing disciples are seen leaving town or hiding. The gospel has temporarily ceased flowing in this climate of hopelessness and fear. Those who brought words of hope were shrugged off and discredited until Jesus made personal appearances to the disheartened disciples. What they read in the Scripture promised a conquering hero. What they ignored in the Scriptures was the suffering Messiah. Are there promises God has made to you and perhaps fulfilled, but because it is not the way you expected, you might not have recognized them? This week, let's sit down, write out what we have asked God for, what He's promised, and what has happened thus far.